Okay, so today we start, my apologies, another part of chapter 25, the deals with evocations, in which Kardec is suggesting to us here now, how should we properly speak with spirits? I think the first thing to keep in mind ourselves that spirits, all of us, right? Sometimes with, sometimes without a physical body, sometimes in the physical world, sometimes in the spiritual world. So, in a sense, what applies to incarnate applies also to discarnate, with very minimal adaptation or modifications, which Kardec will stress here, especially in the very first paragraph that we're going to read. But it cannot or should not be also different. The way that a polite, humble person would address a high order and a low order spirit would be all that different. Naturally, we have to adjust our conversation to the topic of discussion, to the function, the objective, or to whom we're speaking. If you're speaking with someone a lot more evolved to us, to which all we can do is learn, we'll have a slightly different conversation. If you speak with someone, and there are someone like that, believe it or not, that all they can do, at least at that moment, is to learn, is to receive something from us that are not in condition, at least at that moment, to give us anything of positive. There will be a different of the tone that is adjusted to the objective of our conversation. One is to be able to suck as much information as possible. The other one to be to provide as more information as possible. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves that spirits may not be able to receive any information at all, and though they can provide to them emanations of peace, of understanding, of sympathy, of empathy, and that may go a long way, much more than trying to provide informations that sometimes we are not able to get. But in general, it's pretty much the same as we talk to incarnate or to discarnate. And some major differentiation Kardec's going to give to us here, primarily in this first paragraph. So, right, to do the reading?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
The proper manner of speaking to spirits. 280. The degree to which spirits have evolved naturally indicates the tone. Oh, what happened? Okay. Indicates the tone in which we should speak to them. It is obvious that the more elevated they are, the more they deserve our respect, consideration, and submission. We should treat them with no less deference than if they were still incarnate. But for other reasons, during terrestrial life, we would consider their job and their social position, whereas in the spirit world, we only respect them for their moral superiority. This elevation in itself places them above the cruelties of our formal flatterings. We will not win their benevolence with mere words, but with sincere sentiments. Therefore, it would be ridiculous to give them the titles we use to distinguish positions and in which life would please their vanity. If they are truly superior, they not only assign little importance to these titles, but they also find them disagreeable. A moral thought pleases them more than flattering epithets. Otherwise, they would not be above ordinary humanity. The spirit of a venerable priest who was a prince of the church while on earth and who practiced the teachings of Jesus responded to someone who evoked him by the title of my Lord. You should at least say, ex my Lord, for here there is only one Lord, who is God. You should know very well that there are those here who kneeled before me while on earth, but whom I kneel before now.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay, so as I said, the ways of treating anyone would be pretty much the same, always with respect. And it does reveals what we are, what we have inside ourselves. By the way, the things comes out of us, right? If we're treating someone's, let's say, on a lower position in the workplace, and we address them with sense of superiority, putting ourselves above them and put them beneath us, it reveals what we are, what we really are. If we are dealing with someone in a position much superior than ours, someone the top leadership, then we treat them, we speak with them as if we were someone just at our level, it also reveals pretty much what we are. Right? So in both sense, in both cases reveals a pride, a not in the good sense, that to carry within us. When dealing with higher spirits, they would be humbled enough that the titles that they may have carried during their physical existence become meaningless. The titles, the, the social class, the positions for higher spirits are almost like the physical body. They belong to the physical world, they don't carry them. Of course, for low order spirits, they will carry those titles because they still have that sense of pride. They still believe that carrying that they think about after their name, Doctor such and such, or Your Majesty such and such, or in the case over here, My Lord such and such, pleases them because of their vanity, because of their pride. A higher spirit does not have vanity to be fed, does not have pride to be fed. They do not need that. Naturally, if it's said with respect, let's say if we call, at least I cannot even say it any other way. If I think of, how can I try here, Bezerra de Menezes, it's very hard for me to say Bezerra de Menezes. You're going to come out as Dr. Bezerra de Menezes. I'm so used to put that title before the name, a title that he worked, that he deserved while incarnate, that to me personally almost become his entire name. I don't think you'd be careless if I do say called Dr. Bezerra de Menezes. His nickname is Doctor of the Poor, right? Um, in Brazil, actually, because he had provided medication treatment to the physical body. It's for so many in Brazil that he has the nickname there of Doctor of the Poor. But I'm absolutely convinced that someone called him just Bezerra de Menezes, he would not mind, he would not care at all. Perhaps it would even please him more than to have the title before the name. What I'm trying to say is that they don't care either way. In general, they don't care either way. But if our spirit we use every opportunity to teach, and I think in this case, they want to say, should last, let's say, at least say, X Lord, and here comes the teaching. For here there is only one Lord, who is God. We should know very well that there are those here who knew before me what on earth, but whom I knew before now. So this here is an opportunity of teaching that perhaps this higher spirit have used to give us this valuable information in this case. A higher spirit, if they're truly higher spirit, they don't care for the titles. The opposite lower spirit will be extremely offended if you omit it. If a lower spirit happened to have the opportunity to be a queen while incarnate, it's very unlikely that she will be expected or accept to be called anything less than a queen or your majesty or whatever that may be associated with that culture. A higher spirit will have to have the title of a queen here. Once they go back to the spiritual world, they will leave the title behind, just as they leave the physical body behind. It is from us that we show our respect to those individuals when we speak with them. So if I would have the opportunity to speak, let's say, with St. Louis, that, I don't know how he deals with the title of saint, because that becomes a different discussion, because we know the title of saint has positive and not so positive connotations as well. I don't know how he does it. But if I address him as St. Louis as a symbol of my respect to his work, I don't think he would mind. But perhaps you'd use the opportunity to say, what do you call saint? What is the definition of a saint? What do you think a saint is in accordance to your views? Perhaps you'd use the opportunity to teach. Yeah, that's it here.
Okay.
Comments?
The end is this sentiment right behind the the words.
Right. Yes. When I want to express my gratitude to that individual, recognition for that individual was during that incarnation and is continue to be in the spiritual world, and put a title before that in recognition of that work. Is put my sentiment associated with that. It'll be well received. If it's in a tone of sarcasm, perhaps they would never even show up because they know that we are not serious. You are not willing to learn from what they have to offer.
Okay, continue.
Please.
Okay. When addressing low order spirits, their particular character determines the language we should employ. Among them are those who may be inoffensive and even benevolent, but who are nevertheless frivolous, ignorant, or foolish. To address them like serious spirits, as some people do, would be the same as if we were to bow before a grade school student or a donkey wearing a doctrinal hood. A casual tone is certainly not strange to them, nor does it offend them. On the contrary, that is what they prefer. Among the less evolved spirits are those who are unhappy. Whatever the wrongs they are expiating, their sufferings deserve our pity all the more, For no one escapes these words of Christ. Let the one who is without sin cast the first stone. Treating them with benevolence is consoling to them. In their need of sympathy, they ought to find in us the same tolerance that we would want for ourselves.
Thanks.
Mhm.
So if you imagine putting it in a very basic way, I know in real life that may not happen, but if you imagine in a classroom, where there is the teacher that should be the authority in the classroom, that should be the one who is able to provide instructions to all. And there is an adult, capable, certified teacher teaching in a class, for a class, let's say, I don't know, 8, 9 years old kids. And among those kids, there'll be one that is the son of a famous public person. They were the one that is the son of a general of the army or something like that. The teacher is there to teach all of them, and all of them should have the same kind of respect to that teacher. And the teacher should teach all those kids the same way, not giving more attention or greater respect for the son of the famous public person or the son of the or daughter of the army general. There might be amongst those perhaps one of those sons of famous persons who place themselves in the position of believing to deserve preferential attention. It is the responsibility of that teacher to educate, to teach that individual of the teacher must make her position, must have her knowledge, must make her moral ascendance to prevail over everything else, right? If we're talking to spirits, we start a conversation with us in a very colloquial manner. It's absolutely proper, and my proper personal belief, even advisable, to maintain the same colloquial approach. But colloquial, simple, everyday conversation does not mean disrespectful. Colloquial, simple, the same way that we would be speaking with friends at a dinner table, but with respect, but with but friendly, right? If you're speaking with what would be at least in that situation, spirits that are suffering, that are below us on a scale of moral evolvement, it is absolutely necessary that you make prevail our moral superiority, because that's where the respect will come from. That's why we will open their ears to listen to us. That's where there is this irresistible hierarchy that will always prevail. But we have to make it prevail. And as Kardec has taught us before, it is through the language that pretty much we have that sense and established that superiority in communications, of course. So to have a casual tone, that's fine, but always with respect, not being selective with proper words to use. And if I'm dealing with spirits who are unhappy, and because of being unhappy, they may be extremely angry, they may be out of pain, they may be trying to spread that pain to everyone else. that's where we are really going to be tested as out of our moral superiority, of our moral ascendance towards those spirits. That is the time that we understand that we're not really be able to instruct, to teach someone who is so enclosed into themselves, who are so enclosed into their mono ideas that we see very often. And that is where only an injection of vibrations, of peaceful thoughts that we're going to, let's say, to bathe or to feed those spirits with our words. The words, they're not going to get it. But the way we sweeten that words with our affection, with our love, will make a difference for that spirits. They may not be able to understand, they may not be able to agree, they may not be able to get anything, but the energy of affection, of empathy, of sympathy, that they will get. Those I stick to them. And that's exactly what we would like to have the same situation. And before we point fingers, oh, you deserve to be suffering, let's remember, no, that's the one who is taught us to first to cast the first stone. Remember, if today we speak with someone who's just been rescued from the lower zones, maybe my time is not too far when I've been in need of the same kind of rescue as well. Okay.
Okay.
Continue.
You have the next paragraph. Right. Okay. Thank you. Spirits who show how little evolved they are through their cynical language, lies, base sentiments, and perfidious advice are certainly less worthy of our interest than those whose words display their repentance. But we should nonetheless treat them with at least as much pity as the great criminals inspire in us. The way to reduce them to silence is by showing that we are of higher order than they, because they only establish relationships with persons of whom they have nothing to fear. Perverse spirits recognize the superiority of moral individuals, just as they recognize the superiority of high order spirits. To summarize, it would be irrelevant to treat high order spirits as our equals, just as it would be ridiculous to show the same deference to all spirits without exception. We should venerate those who deserve it, recognize those who protect and assist us, and show the others the same benevolence that we ourselves might need someday. By unveiling the incorporeal world, we learn to understand it, and this understanding should guide our relationships with its inhabitants. In their ignorance, the ancients raised altars to them. For us, they are creatures who may be more purified or less so than we ourselves are. And it is to God alone that we raise altars.
Yes, I think we have covered this pretty much. The only thing that I find interesting that's not said yet is that, and we see that quite a lot in our meetings, that spirits coming in with displaying a complete inability to listen, who will not in any way leave aside the tone of a language that is cynical, that is based on their low order sentiments. And we have this question had come in meetings, and I think everyone has questioned oneself. They keep coming back the same way, the same way, the same way. I mean, why? Well, it's not up to us to select who are the spirits who come into the meeting, but after they come, they have be treated the same kind of respect. What, of course, we would look for those who are recurrent is to see some display of repentance. If it didn't happen this time, the 50th time, perhaps it happened the 60th time. Perhaps it happened over the 10th time. Someone keeps coming back, and it gives them a feeling that absolutely nothing happened. And they state, I haven't been here before, and you guys never give up. Don't you get tired of it? Don't you see that it doesn't help at all? Just leave me alone. We see that quite often, but we will continue to do our best to try, and eventually, hopefully, you'll be able to hear this display of repentance, because that's what we should be aiming, because it's from the repentance that they will become ready for reparations. All right. But regardless, every time that they come in, still angry, you're still not bending at all on their ways, they will recognize the moral superiority of the members of the group, at least in that environment, at least where we are there. And the summary is exactly what I said before. It's not that much different from our physical life. That we will recognize the titles, you respect those titles. We will act in accordance to the cultures, to the normal behavior of our society. You know, if it's not in a society in which you're supposed to bow to some titles, you bow. If we are supposed to address individuals with specific titles, we will follow the laws of the land, very much aware that what really matters is the moral qualities. One would imagine that in a more evolved world, those titles, those higher positions would be equitable with the moral elevations of individuals in that position, which you know for sure is not the case in our world of trials and expiations, and unfortunately it seems to be quite the contrary, especially what we witness these days, that those come to the highest positions seems to be the lowest in immoral conquests. I think that's what means to where evil prevails of good. Okay, comments?
Okay, we continue. The
So
useful,
now, go ahead.
the usefulness of private evocations. 281. Communications with highly evolved spirits, or those who animated great personage in antiquity, are valuable for their elevated teachings. These spirits have reached a degree of purification that enables them to embrace a wider circle of ideas, to unveil mysteries that surpass human possibilities, and to thereby initiate us better than other spirits could into certain matters. However, this does not mean that communications with lower order spirits are worthless, because the observer can definitely learn from them. To understand the customs of a nation, one must study it on every level. Whoever observes it in only one of its aspects does not understand it well at all. The history of a nation is not the history of its monarchs or its authorities. Rather, to form an opinion about it, we must research the life of its people and their particular customs. Thus, high order spirits are the authorities of the spirit world. And their very elevation places them above us in such a way that we are amazed at the distance that separates them from us. The more bourgeois spirits, may they forgive us for this expression, make the conditions of their new existence more palpable to us. Their connection between the corporeal and the spirit life is narrower, and we can comprehend it better because it touches us more closely. By learning directly from them about what they have become, what they think about, and what individuals of all conditions and characters experience, moral or cruel, great and small, happy and unhappy individuals of our own times. In a word, those who have lived among us, whom we have seen and known, whose real lives we have witnessed with its virtues and errors. We better understand their joys and sufferings. We share in both and receive a moral lesson from both. This lesson is more profitable than the more intimate are the connections between the spirits and us, since it is easier for us to put ourselves in the place of one who is our equal than in that of another, whom we only see through the mirage of celestial glory. Ordinary spirits show us the practical results of the great and sublime truths, which the high order spirits give us in theory. Moreover, nothing is worthless in the study of a science. Newton discovered the laws of universal forces by observing the simplest phenomenon. Evoking ordinary spirits has a further advantage in that it puts us in contact with suffering spirits, those whom we may comfort and help with good counsels in their advancement. Thus, we can be useful while we learn. To seek only our own satisfaction in our relationship with spirits would be a plain selfish, and those who fail to extend a helping hand to the unfortunate only prove their own pride. What good would it do to obtain fine communications from elevated spirits if doing so does not render us better, more charitable and more benevolent toward our brothers and sisters of this and the other world? What would become of unpolished, diseased persons if doctors refused to touch their open sores?
Thank you. When I read this passage, I think he is trying to tell us why he wrote Heaven and Hell, why he divided the book in half, one part of the unhappy spirits, the other part of the happy spirits. And of course, that's not the case, but we see that Heaven and Hell is the collection of evocations, and a collection of evocations of a part that's called the unhappy spirits, the suffering spirits, the rebellious spirits, and another part is of the happy spirits. If someone goes, let's say, to Nepal, one of the government officials, someone of a high level of Nepal, invites one of us to go to Nepal, spend 6 months in Nepal, and we accept the invitation, we go. And during that 6 months, we go traveling from one palace to another, going to the high society feasts and parties, spend the whole 6 months over there doing that. And then we come back home and we're going to talk to our friends and what we are going to say of Nepal. Oh, it's a beautiful country of happy people. There is no poverty. Everybody is happy. The food is tremendous. It's wonderful. Why do we say that? Because we did not use those 6 months to learn of Nepal, to learn from the people of Nepal. We spent 6 months in a selective, not the 2%, so to say, and we are judging whole Nepal by the 2% that we experienced. So we did not learn anything of Nepal. It's 2% of what Nepal is. That was Nepal, just whatever, because there's a country many people don't know. But the same thing, go. Someone or the 2% of Brazil takes someone who have never been to Brazil and they live in Brazil for 6 months, going from parties to parties, from 5-star hotel to 5-star hotel. You can say he gets to learn Brazil? Absolutely not. Nothing, right? I mean, if you're going to know Brazil, you're going to sit at the square, you're going to eat what the people are eating, you're going to experience what the people experience. Then you can say that you got to know a little bit of Brazil. We go to those, or people go without, to those all-inclusive resorts in the Caribbean and say, oh, I know that country, I know that island. No, you don't. You know that resort. You didn't put a foot outside of it, didn't see the people. No, you know that resort. You don't know that country. If we want to learn, get valuable information from the spiritual world, we have the same way to get all the possible information for the different levels of existence in the spiritual world as much as possible. So the idea of only evoke the higher spirits, we're learning and learn from the higher spirits. Kardec is smart enough to tell us, but here, well, the higher spirits may tell you of things of the inferior level of existence that is in the spiritual world. They may tell you about those suffering the lower zones. And that may serve as a theoretical learning. The same way that we don't need to go to Nepal to learn. We can open a book, we can go on, we can Google, we can see pictures and everything else, but it's not the same as being there, breathing the air, eating their food. So if you wanted to learn more of the spiritual world, the same thing, going beyond the theoretical that higher spirits may provide to us, we should also choose to speak, to evoke spirits living at different stages, at different levels in the spiritual world. That's how we're really going to learn as much as possible. Having knowledge is good knowledge. That's something that I always say. You may not have to apply, hopefully not. If you're walking around and something smells like marijuana, it's good to know, to be able to recognize that it's cannabis. Now that's the smell of cannabis. It doesn't mean that you have to smoke it to know it. We learn, you don't apply, you don't use it, you stay above that. What makes you cognizant of what's happening in that environment. If you choose to stay, but everybody's doing cannabis, you stay. But recognizing that if you choose not to stay, you walk away. What do we care about learning from low order spirits who are suffering? Well, if from one side, from the higher spirits, we can learn what to do and why, from the lower spirits, we may learn what not to do and why. We can learn from their experiences and prevent ourselves from going through the same experiences. If you're in the position, another great reason to evoke lower spirits or suffering spirits is the opportunity to the exercise of charity. how much charity can we provide to higher spirits? How much help can we provide to higher spirits? Zero. There we are in the position of receiving their charity, of being an instrument of the pity, right? If it's somewhat stuck in the middle, from the higher spirits you can receive their compassion. And at the same way, if you're right in the middle, there are those below. We should pass to those below our compassion, the little that we have to offer, the little that we have to help. As Emmanuel says, love is something that must be in constant motion. Love has to be like a river that is continuing, the water is continually moving. It comes from, emanates from God, from the higher, from the Christ, the higher spirits. It reaches us. It cannot stop on us. That is the problem that we have today. That in our selfishness, in our pride, it seeks to stop on us instead of allow it to continue to flow. So the same way it comes to us from those who are better prepared, believe it or not, we are better prepared than others well. So you must let this love flow, continue its flow, and not try to stop, to interrupt it. So with the exercise of charity, we can and we should evoke suffering spirits. Spirits who are angry, spirits who you curse us, why you bring me here, why are you doing this? But we do with the intention of provide as much charity as possible to those spirits. So there is two important reasons. One, the knowledge, and two, the exercise of charity to those spirits. Comments, questions? No? Okay. So now we go to, as I've said before, just but in every end of chapter, Kardec brings a Q&A using answers from the spirits to further explain all that he has already said. It's almost used the Q&A as a summary of the chapters. Okay, and here it's not different. We have some questions that Kardec plays. I believe was Kardec who placed those questions to malevolent spirits. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I was muted.
No problem.
Okay, questions concerning evocations, 282. Number 1, could someone evoke spirits without being a medium? Everyone can evoke spirits. Even though they might not be able to manifest materially, they may nevertheless approach and listen to the evoker.
Okay, so we already said that just last week. There is a three-part thing over here, right? You have the evoker, you have the medium, and you have the spirit or the subject being evoked. So the evoker not necessarily is the medium. It could be, the evoker could be also the medium. But very often there's evoker be a third party. I'm not a medium, I would like to speak with my grandma. There's a medium over here available. If God allows it, allow that my grandma may use this medium to communicate with me. I just made an evocation. We're gonna use a spirit or medium with generosity to be able to speak with the subject. That would be my grandma. My grandma may not be able to participate, as we discussed last week. Sometimes there is a intermediate messenger, but we learned last week as well that we will come in and send a message to the meeting and say, Elmo, your grandma is not available now, but hang on, maybe next meeting should be available.
Okay.
But again, just to clarify, the medium can be the evoker also, right? the medium that I'm asking to help me to communicate with my grandmother, maybe the evoker who wants to speak with his own or her own grandmother as well.
Okay. Number 2. Will a spirit who is evoked always answer when called? It depends on its situation because there are circumstances in which it is unable to answer.
Okay, we covered that as well. And
Mhm.
again, this is pretty much a recap of the whole chapter, as I said, that the spirits may not be able to communicate at that time. Maybe the spirit is doing some work in a different physical planet or physical celestial body and cannot come to us for logistic reasons. No, it would have to be a differentiation of the perispirit that is compared with that part of our universe, but would not be compared with this part of the universe. Would have to make that differentiation of the perispirit and could not be done so fast or anything like that. This is not science fiction. This is factual. It may be because that person that we evoking is now incarnate on Earth, and although possible, no, you can understand it becomes a lot more difficult that the spirit, that physical body of that spirit to be in a state of rest, and that spirit to be comfortable or leaving that body resting and come and communicate. So it becoming more difficult, or perhaps that spirit is in a state of distress, of suffering situation that would not be fruitful, neither for that spirit, not for the evoker. So there's many reasons that the one they revoked may not be able to attend to our calls. And a fourth one may not want to. Just as simple as that. Just I don't want to pick up the phone. Whether it rings as much as it rings, I'm not going to pick it up. Period.
Okay. Number 3. What causes may prevent its coming? First, its own will. Next, its corporeal state, if it is incarnate, its mission, or perhaps prohibition to appear. There are also spirits who can never communicate, who because of their nature still inhabit worlds less evolved than Earth. Furthermore, those on globes of punishment cannot communicate unless they have received permission from higher up, which is only granted in cases of general usefulness. In order for a spirit to communicate, it must have reached the degree of evolution of the world to which it is called, because otherwise it will be foreign to the culture of such world and will not have the means of comparison available for expressing itself. This does not apply to those who have been sent on a mission or for expiation to less evolved worlds, because they possess ideas needed for responding.
So think of the possible reasons that I did not cover, the one that being prohibited or not allowed. For whatever reason, spirits in a state of stress, let's say some the spirits were right now part of the team that we're seeing with in the book Liberation. They may try to escape for a moment and attend to evocation of a loved one, because they do have loved ones as well, but they may not be allowed by the bosses over there in the spiritual world, or even more important, may not be allowed by higher spirits, because perhaps they will cause more distress for those who are evoking, or perhaps they need that separation to feel that separation to be an instrument to help them to start think of making some kind of changes. There is many reasons the spirit may not also be allowed. And of course, there is this degree of physicality, so to say, of materiality is a better word, of the perispirit. They may not be really comparable to live that state where they are at the moment, in that part of that celestial body, to be able to come and communicate in our world for the differentiations of the perispirit that will not be comparable for them to communicate. And of course, there is more for spirits of our level to lesser than us. For a higher spirit to be able, would have a much more ethereal, so to say, perispirit that would be much easier, malleable to adapt to many different situations.
I think as we learn more about the spiritual world in the works of André Luiz, right, and Manuel Filomeno de Miranda, it makes it much more easier for us to understand the inability of the spirits to communicate, right? Because let's think about André Luiz's grandfather there that we just read a couple of in the last book, right? Mm-hmm. You can invoke him until the end of time, but he's not going to come. He's in no condition of coming. He's so obsessed with his own fortune there that he won't engage into the mental vibration, allow people to communicate. But it doesn't need to be in this difficult state. We can think of André Luiz in Nosso right? If by any reason his former wife invoked him, he was not prohibited to go, but he was advised not to go, and he probably wouldn't go, right? Because he was learning, and there was a reason for him not to go, right? So I thought about it in the other aspect, because it's very easy to imagine that a spirit like his grandfather won't be able to come, or his father that is there also in the lower zones, but he himself, right, in Nosso Lar, which is a spirit in recovery, in doing the right work, would be advised not to come, because it's not the wisest choice at the moment, because it's going to cause him suffer.
I think it's very good that you mentioned that point that to more on our daily life, so to say, right? Because we all know, we all have loved ones in the spiritual world that we'd like to hear from them. I don't know how you're doing, because we miss them, because we want to know that they are okay with anything else, that we got no news at all, and in general, no news is good news. But that's a very good point. Is perhaps someone really busy learning and doing things in the spiritual world that makes it not a favorable condition for them to come and fulfill our sentimentalism out of ignorance, that perhaps it's better for them to do what they're doing over there at that moment, and better for us to do what we're doing over here as well. You're right, you don't have to go to such extremes of having a completely differentiated perispirits, or being in such a horrible shape like André Luiz's grandfather. Could be a normal thing, just like André Luiz already recovered, already got through his surgical procedure in the spiritual world, already understood a lot, have already progressed already, but being a device now, don't mess with the physical world yet. Stay here, continue to do the work here. When the time is right, you do it. And when the time is right, I don't know, but in our chronological time here on Earth, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, is whatever it's right. Doesn't mean that something is wrong. It just means that it's not the right time. And I think André Luiz also is a good example, because when he tries to force the issue, he had a really bad experience.
Yeah, maybe, and also I was thinking here, maybe we're evoking for the wrong reason. So a more evolved spirit will not come because it's not good for us, right?
Right. Okay, number 4.
Okay, number 4.
We
For
have
what
2
reason?
minutes, Elmo.
Yeah.
We'll do one more. Okay.
Okay, one more. Okay. Number 4. For what reasons might a spirit be denied permission to communicate? It may be a trial or punishment for it, or for the one who calls it.
And that's perhaps the one last possibility is that, as I said before, let's say on the spirits is part of the team of in the lower zone is perturbing that young lady that are continuing to learn on Sunday. He is the core of the one who is incarnate, to have the desire to come in and just not allowed by higher spirits. Um, that separation may be exactly what that spirit needs in order to start to elevate its sentiments a little more, in order to be able to be rescued eventually. May not be allowed to do it. Of course, we don't like the word punishment, and that's why I'm putting it that you cannot, because you need to go to this hardship as a learning experience, for eventually you'll soften yourself and then be helped. We stop here. Any questions? Okay. 31. If no more questions, let I end with a prayer. As once again, we give thanks to God, our Father, Creator, and the one who provides all things. We give thanks to our beloved Master Jesus Christ, to our spiritual benefactors, the good workers of SGNY, for being with us, for bringing to us the inspiration, the energies, to help us to continue to move forward in the pathway of moral and intellectual progress. And for that, we are grateful, dear God. We ask to be inspired to maintain vigilance with our sentiments, to be inspired to free ourselves from any harmful sentiment that generates unwise thoughts. We ask, beloved Master Jesus Christ, that you help us to follow your steps, to act in accordance to your teachings. We ask that you give for us your peace, that all of us are in great need, and that your peace may spread throughout this planet, that the most minds and hearts will choose harmony, will choose to build and not to destroy, we choose harmony and sharing of the wealth for the benefit of the whole human race. Help us, beloved Master, to do our part in our macro universe. Let us work for peace within ourselves and around us to the best of our abilities. And with this in mind, we ask permission to close this meeting. So be it. Thanks, everyone.